Welcome back, everybody. This is English 245B, Survey of World Literature 2. I am Professor Patchell, and I'm here with our embedded tutor, the sensational Hannah Emmack, and we are ready to talk about The Gospel According to Mark by Jorge
Luis Borges.
That is correct. Okay, so I'm going to make the dangerous claim that this is one of Borges's more accessible and easy to understand stories.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think so. I think maybe even more than the Zahir. Sometimes the Zahir is a little more, this story, I feel like you, at the end, might be able to, I got it, even if you didn't see that it was being set up throughout.
Yes, and also it is more of a, you get, like, to me, it seems like you just get more events in this story. There's kind of a little more traditional plot. It's not as much...
beginning, middle, and end. You do have more sequence like that. You're structurally kind of railroaded a little more.
Yeah, there's more action. I mean, you feel like you're actually in their world rather than in the mind of the character, which, like in the Zahir, I really feel like, we're stuck in the mind of the narrator.
Sure.
This story involves a college student, a medical student, who is on a break, sort of like spring break or summer break.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Espinosa.
His name is Espinosa, Baltazar Espinosa, and he wants to get away, and his cousin,
Daniel,
is sort of a partier and kind of like a much more easygoing. He sounds like he's more social and interactive. He has a rancho out in the middle of nowhere, kind of in the countryside, and he invites Espinosa out to spend the vacation with him. And Espinosa goes, and...
Well, he meets the farmhands, the Goutre family, and there ends up being a flood that keeps them all in, and they end up cohabitating because the Goutre's living situation is destroyed, and even, of course, they lose some of the livestock as well. Much of the livestock is lost.
Yes.
It's a crazy flood. All the 4 exits are completely blocked off. So we get the bulk of the story with the Goutres and Espinosa interacting. This Espinosa character, too, we, of course, know that he stockpiles all the literature that's left in the house for entertainment.
Which isn't much.
It's not much. I mean, there's a few like detective novels, there's some magazines, there's the history of
There's
gauchos
a book on the gauchos, yes, which are Argentinian cowboys and ranch hands and those sorts of things.
Right, and they're not interested in that because that book doesn't even really understand their culture.
Right. Yeah.
But there is the Bible in English translation. So Espinosa decides to read the Gospel According to Mark to the Goutres after dinner. And they really take a liking to this gospel.
Right.
Yep.
And, yes, and his cousin never makes it there because of the flood. His cousin was supposed to get there a couple days later, and because of the flood, he never makes it there. So Espinosa, who is literate, and he's obviously got a bachelor's degree or whatever, and, he's in medical school now, finds himself stuck with these illiterate ranch hands, the Goutres, as Hannah said, and a limited amount of literature. And think about this. This is a time, I don't even think there were telephones at this time, and certainly there wouldn't be one out here. There's no internet. There's nothing like that. So they're cut off. All they have is books.
Yeah.
Horrifying, huh?
Oh,
yes.
Wow, yeah.
Yes, and as Hannah said, he decides he'll try to read the Bible to them.
Yeah. Why
Gospel
not?
According to Mark.
They like it. They're really interested. And then he even says that instead of variety, because the Goutres ask him to repeat the Gospel According to Mark, to reread it after he's finished, he remarks that somehow they're like children. They value repetition over variety.
Yes,
maybe the contents of that gospel were very compelling to them.
Right, and they are sort of simpletons. They have no... I mean, I'm sure that you would want them on your ranch taking care of everything, but they have no, they can't read.
They can't explain how to do any of these ranch actions or anything like that. They're very good at being farmhands, but they don't know. They couldn't teach anyone how.
Right, and it's a father and a son and a daughter, and yes, they are. So they have to eat together every night. In fact, Espinosa sort of presides over dinner with the Goutres. And he's sort of like, I mean, imagine if you were with some people who had nothing to talk about with you, right? That you were sitting there going, okay, we're going to have to spend all this time together. So after dinner every night, he decides to read the gospel to them. And they're really into it.
Yeah, they're really into it. They're so into it that, of course, I think that it comes together throughout, but they see Espinosa as a Jesus figure.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's so many little details to mm-hmm. support this.
Right. If you know anything about Jesus or his story or the Gospels, it's like Espinosa happens to be 33 years old, which is the age Jesus was when he died or was killed, and he grows a beard while he's on the ranch.
He heals the lamb, the daughter's little lamb, with pills mm-hmm. instead of herbs, right? And that does wonders. Mm-hmm. So they believe in miracle. They believe in his ability to perform miracles, mm-hmm. right? And during the night there's a storm at one point, and he hears them taking the beams from the tool shed, which they will use to function the cross, and he thinks it's the ark.
Yes,
right?
He has this vision. And think about this. This is, I think, another one of this story is so small, but it does so much, right? It's intertextual. It's self-reflexive. It just does it. You can look at those terms in the literary lexicon in your pages. And they get stuck here, and
they get stuck here. And okay. Of course, the Goutres are unfamiliar with... Why wouldn't Espinosa seem like a Jesus figure to them? Mm-hmm. He does, and Espinosa does not suspect this whatsoever. I mean, he's completely clueless to everything here. As things progress, their daughter ends up going to visit him during one of the evenings and sleeping with him. We see that she's completely naked, she's trembling, and they have sex. Mm-hmm. And then just the day after, I believe, is when they lead him to be crucified.
Right. And we never get the crucifixion. He wakes up, and they drag him outside and start spitting on him and cursing him, and then
he thinks it's because of the sex with the daughter, right?
Yes. Yeah. And just a little bit about Espinosa. He's a medical student, but he's sort of an earnest dope. Like he just kind of goes through life, and he's no expert on the scriptures or anything like that. And he's sort of a nominal Catholic. We get the idea from. He still says his prayers and all that, but kind of clueless. Yeah. So they drag him out there. And he sees the cross that he was dreaming about Noah's Ark being built. He heard them sawing and chopping. And remember, these are probably these types of ranch hands that can do anything on a ranch. So their whole idea from this experience is that, okay, if you are going to fulfill the gospel, mm-hmm. then, you have to kill the Jesus figure. And to them, Espinosa is the Jesus figure.
Yep.
And
they even ask the people who hammered the nails, are they also redeemed? Are they also saved? And Espinosa, of course, of course, everyone is. He doesn't care. He doesn't even think of that question as being odd or anything, but they're really, clearly they're going to be concerned because they want to check if salvation applies to everyone equally, because they believe that Espinosa is Jesus and they must crucify him so that all people can be saved, right?
Right, and I think that one of the great things about this story is just how clueless Espinosa is.
Yeah.
Like, he's just sort of going about his days, and he's kind of amazed when they all get down to dinner and they start bolting down their food like as fast as they can because they want the story. They want to get their story, right? And then they want it repeated like kids, mm-hmm. like children. And then the conclusion that they arrive to is astounding, pretty much, right? Like, okay, we have to bring about, like, it's up to them to bring about the redemption of the world.
Right.
So we got to kill this guy, crucify him. I wonder what they think when 3 days later he doesn't come out of the tomb.
I guess that's up for us to interpret, right?
Yes,
that's
right.
A good question.
Right, and like a lot of Borges' stories, and like your discussion talks about, is Borges is always going to be dealing with a concept mm-hmm. of memory, language, time, consciousness. These are all subjects that he's going to take. So we might ask, what concept, so what's this story about? And I think this is a really seditious story and a really it's a sneaky story, right? Because it's really about interpretation. The Borges are read what we would consider a volatile text, right? The scriptures. I mean, if you think about all that has been said and done in the name of with the Bible as kind of like its justification.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're talking
used for so much rhetoric, so much
building beautiful hospitals and universities to massacres and killing people. So this is a text that is really volatile, and really people should approach texts like this with care, just like you should approach the Borges story with care, right? And what's at stake here is, what do we do with texts? And it's really important that Espinosa reads this to the Goutres as entertainment.
Yeah.
I mean, he is not trying to teach them anything or trying to compel them towards religion or anything like that. So their reaction is really kind of shocking. And what we have to do is look for the meaning in this. What exactly is going on here, and what's the big deal with the interpretation?
Well, I mean, for one, there's a distance between Espinosa and the Goutres because they can't communicate. The Goutres can't communicate their interpretation exactly to Espinosa. So even if they were having a diverted certain interpretation, thinking him Jesus, there's no way for him to know that because cross communication is cut off, which is actually one of the greatest things about textual interpretations is that it is a constant discourse and a dialogue between other texts. Our interpretations of fiction, as well as religious texts such as the Bible, are in communication with previous and future interpretations, and they all it's a long line of knowledge, a long transmission of knowledge, and it's kind of in this story like these parts are being isolated. The text, the Gospel according to Mark, the Gospel of Mark is being isolated, and Espinosa is isolated from the Goutres interpretation, and so all of these parts are not functioning simultaneously, and the Goutres are kind of left to maybe a blind way of interpreting. It's
just sort of like whatever they want to do. They have no guidance at all.
No guidance.
And they have very little education. I mean, no education really, except for in how to take care of ranch duties, which I'm sure they excel at. But Hannah's point, your point about discourse is very well taken. And this is something that I think a lot of the lay community, I say the lay community is people who are not, say, trained to read texts, or they are not authorities in this field, or they don't have a background to deal with the subject matter. So, and Espinosa doesn't either. Even though he's not trying to interpret it, he's kind of just got this presumed handed down, probably from his Catholic upbringing, that this is what the Bible means. I don't have to think about it. Even though he's sort of like agnostic almost. He doesn't seem to have, he's not convicted at all.
No,
really.
Not really.
So we're left with this. They can't even read it, right? It's been read to them. So they don't even have the text to study, which is probably why they wanted it repeated.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So is there what they did with it? Do you think what they did with it was valid, Hannah? I mean, what they do with this, is this a valid interpretation? Could you say?
Valid as in, does it make sense that they thought that, or is the interpretation itself valid? Okay. One, it makes sense that they thought that. I guess we can justify their having come to those conclusions with the information that they were given. Sure, but the question does stand, yeah. Is their interpretation the most accurate, or the most valid, or the most supportable, or the most beneficial interpretation? Well, no, I'd say.
Yeah, and you would say this, Hannah, right? But I would say, is any interpretation valid? Like, why is their interpretation less valid than, say, renounce sin and follow Jesus and go and feed the poor, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and shelter the homeless, right? Why is their interpretation not as valid as that interpretation, I guess you could say.
Well, I suppose that I would ask too, do you think that interpretation could come all from them having read this one gospel and having no external communication with any of the other parts of the Bible or any of the other religious discourse around that text without any help from Spinoza? Also, just knowing that murder is very wrong is an interesting thing.
Yes.
It's like this interpretation is not only it's not like it just was their matter of opinion. Well, I believe that Spinoza is Jesus, so it doesn't matter. No, they actually kill him. So technically, their interpretation is not only invalid; it's harmful.
Yes, I agree with you. I think that's a great answer, and your point that they have. This is what I think is really interesting, not only about your answer, but also about what's going on in the book, is that until he reads the gospel to them, until Spinoza reads the gospel to the Gutres, they have no common points of reference. Mm-hmm. And the Gutres have no points of reference concerning the gospel outside of Spinoza reading it to them. So they don't have any of the, say, commentaries of the saints. They don't have any theological writings on it. They don't have the history of the church. They don't, or the schisms, or the separation of Protestantism and Catholicism, like any of these things that might.
Which are things that even children being brought up in faith would have. They would even be instructed in that way.
Sure.
Even children. Yeah.
Sure. So it's sort of like they just, instead of interpreting it, they just kind of do what it does. Mm-hmm. I mean, they almost like mimic it, which is actually a kind of interpretation. Mimesis is
identification, Aristotelian identification.
Very good, right. And they play it out, and they do commit a murder. I mean, we don't get to see it, but we know that it's coming. There are some other little details, too, that I just think are worth mentioning before we get into the real crux of this whole thing. He hears a goldfinch. Did you notice that before? He's right before they nail him to the cross. And the goldfinch was supposedly the bird that was trying to pick the thorns out of the crown on Christ when he was being crucified, right? So there's all these great little details that kind of make the parallel.
Biblical allusions, references,
Biblical allusions, things which they don't have. They don't know any of this stuff, right? Yeah. And even though Spinoza knows it, he just kind of assumes everybody, knows what the Gospels are for or what they do, even though I wouldn't call him some, on fire Christian. But what's at stake here? What's at stake, say, in our world, looking at this little, just strange story of events?
Well, what you just said reminded me about the goldfinch and all of these intertextual details and allusions is that the more context a reader has, maybe the stronger their interpretation can be. Not every person who indulges in literature is going to understand every literary allusion that they read and they encounter. A lot of them are just going to be they know something maybe symbolizes. I'm guilty of this. I'm sure you know much more, but it's just that
you're getting close. I'll tell you. Yes, you are.
Over time, though, in participating in the context, they are able to compile a more well supported interpretation, and I think that it can be really harmful for people now to believe that just any reading of a text is as right or as supportable or even as I want to find a different word to use other than valid, but it's as if all are equal. There wants to be this certain I yesterday called it interpretive relativism,
which
is like believing that just because it's different but equal, right?
Right. That all interpretations are valid, which it sounds good in sort of a liberal democratic, and I don't mean liberal democratic from just sort of like a liberal, yes, all interpretations are valid, this really equal type thing. In the real world, folks, it's just not true. Really, there are interpretations that are better than others. There are interpretations that are just plain wrong, and does the interpretation make the text richer? Does it add to it? I don't know. Maybe the Guthrie's interpretation in some ways does make this text richer, but is it really committing murder just because you heard a story? Is way off, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Right.
We never see that happen.
We never see that happen. And as I said earlier, think of all the things that, say, the Bible has been
attributed to.
Yeah, or used as justification for,
right?
The Holy Inquisition, the massacres in Bosnia Herzegovina, which was ultimately a religious struggle, right? These types of things. These are all, so interpretations matter. Those people who say, well, every interpretation is valid and what does it matter anyway? People have done all sorts of things.
It's the action that comes from interpretation that's really the most, that's the point. That's the huge effect that interpretation has, because it doesn't just happen in a vacuum, right? People, these texts have influences on people and whole civilizations because interpretation comes with a belief. You believe that's what the text is conveying. You believe that's the meaning. When we believe in a meaning that supports our actions, then it can be entirely harmful for us to have this interpretation it's not just a matter of, it's not as good, or it doesn't enrich the text as much.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it downright it damages the world around the text, the world that the text is residing in.
That's absolutely true, Hannah, and it makes me think of, and I know this is we've had this conversation before, but it makes me think of the whole, Hegel had like the dialectic, mm-hmm. and everything was ideas, right? And it was you get an idea, then you get an anti-idea, thesis, antithesis,
antithesis, and then there's a synthesis
new
of the two,
thesis, yes,
right, which is also composed of opposing factors,
right? Right. But so that was all ideas, right? That's a text, and then what is somebody like Karl Marx comes along and makes it into the real thing, which is sort of what the Guthrie's do in the story. They take the philosophical and theological ideas in the Bible, in the Gospel according to Mark, and they make them in materialist, right? Yeah. They make them real in the real world with really bad consequences for Spinoza. And I can just imagine Daniel arriving at the ranch and finding his cousin crucified and everything destroyed, right? And
then unable to even really,
mm-hmm.
Maybe he could communicate with the Guthrie's in that circumstance and see their side.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe, I don't know how communicative they
are. Right.
And so,
right.
Yeah,
and so going back to this, what I want everybody, one of my desires that you take away from this is to sort of inoculate you against those readers and those people who say that they are not interpreting a text, that they are just, quote, telling you what it says, mm-hmm. that they are not doing any interpretation, especially with volatile texts like, say, the Bible or the U.S. Constitution, right, which we know have just volumes of commentary written on them, hundreds or thousands of years of discourse and debate, new readings, new applications.
Yeah, you can't separate, I think, one of these texts from the outcomes they produce necessarily, and
and I would say that all reading is interpretation.
It's true. All reading is interpretation. Because how can we understand it otherwise? We're applying our pre-existing knowledge to it.
Right.
That's interpreting it.
Right. There's Nietzsche is really actually good on this. He talks about there's this misconception that readers derive meanings from texts, and he claims that readers import meaning into texts. And if you think about that, that is all of the reader's background, all of their knowledge, everything that they know about it, their upbringing, whatever social ideas they got from their family, from their society, from their culture, all of that is being imported into a reading, right? So beware those people who say they are not interpreting, they are just telling you what it says. What they're really trying to do is override any ideas that you have that may be contrary to their own.
Boom.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
So beware out there when you're reading cougars, especially literature. It can be tricky, it can be slippery, and I think that Borges is really a great guide to the dangers and riches of interpretation.
Yeah. Well, keep doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll see you on the discussion boards.